Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? I just got myself a cozy Earl Grey tea. It's a bit of a rainy day today. It's August, but it definitely is starting to feel like fall already, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm really excited. Anyway, I wanted to come on today to talk about a part of my life that is kind of uncomfortable to discuss with other people. It's a very vulnerable topic for me. However, I do want to share it kind of as the last part of the series about my major abdominal surgery, how that changed my life, and have been on a healing of self journey ever since. I'm actually really warm. So as I have covered in previous videos, when I was 17, I had major abdominal surgery. I had a tumor the size of a 6-pound baby. It was 20 centimeters removed from my small intestine. I had a couple complications. Fortunately, it didn't affect me so much that I wasn't able to go on a trip to Australia, which I've been planning with my girlfriends for the past year. And while I'm super proud that I taught myself how to heal my own body, and I was working with my teacher, who is now a dear friend of mine, Bear, I was learning about ceremony and the spiritual aspect of what happened to me. I was still reckoning with the aftermath of the surgery, I was still dealing with the post-traumatic stress of the surgery. So I was engaging in some very toxic and kind of self-destructive behaviors that could have put me in a lot of danger. Like many teenagers, I experimented with, partying and drinking when I was in high school. I never really tolerated alcohol very well. It always made me feel horrible. In the morning, I always had hangovers, and now drinking is not really a part of my life. I drink like a few times a year. But it's not really something that I do. It's just weird to think back on when I was a teenager and how much drinking was a part of my social life. What I noticed is after my surgery, and I'm not blaming it on the surgery itself because the choices I made. I'm responsible for those choices. But what I did notice after my surgery is that I would black out a lot. Like almost every single time I drank from, kind of like after my surgery around the time I was 19 until I was probably 25. It was actually scary. Like I could have put myself in so many dangerous situations, and it was just in such opposition of the work I was doing on myself. Obviously, when you're sort of on this spiritual path, you walk on and off it, and I was a young adult, so I was doing a little bit of experimenting, and I was going out with my friends and doing, the things that a lot of 20-year-olds do, but I was doing it to the point where I was like hurting my body and putting myself in danger by blacking out. So that was kind of going on, and I was living in Vancouver. I was also was in a relationship at one point that was really toxic. It was really interesting looking back on how unconsciously I was acting out because I still had all this stuff in my shadow and in my subconscious that I needed to deal with. So basically I got to a point, and this is near the end of my time living in Vancouver, I just felt like a hamster in a wheel. Like I was just spinning my wheels. I've been forcing myself to stay in Vancouver basically to try and build a career, to be an adult in the way that I was expected to be, instead of, I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind since Australia, and since my trip with my friend to South America, that I wanted to travel, but I just was like, no, I have to do all these things that I've been taught to do and indoctrinated to do since I was a kid. I have to build a career, I have to get my shit together. And it just wasn't working. The scene in Vancouver and that little fishbowl of a city, it was not working for me at all. The people, the scene, nothing about that place was working for me anymore. So I'd kind of had this dream I've been thinking about it a lot. I had this dream for a while that I wanted to go live in New Zealand, Aotearoa, for a year. There's just something about New Zealand that was calling me, and I realized that what I had wanted all this time for so many years was just to go traveling again. That's what was really calling me. So I decided to go to New Zealand. I also decided just to go alone. I was like, I'm gonna go solo traveling. I also was at the point where I decided I needed to quit drinking. And I was just going to use this time to spend time with myself and kind of start over. I was like, okay, I'm finally doing the right thing and it's what I want to do. And then when I started traveling, all these magical things started happening. First of all, I wasn't drinking, so I was feeling the healthiest I've ever felt on a trip. I was saving so much money. I was feeling like really empowered just by that first step, but also the synchronicities when I was there. For example, Bear told me to watch this wonderful film called Whale Rider, which is about a young Maori girl who has this connection with the ocean. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is such a beautiful film. I watched that and I was like, wow, that is, being an ocean lover as well and like a dolphin and whale girl, I just really connected with that movie and the main character. And I was like, wow, what an incredible thing to be so connected with those animals. And while I was in New Zealand, I was on the South Island. I spent about 3 or 4 weeks in this area called Takaka, which is the northwestern tip of the South Island of New Zealand. It is so beautiful. There are so many beautiful places there. That was my favorite place. And I was there, I met this girl from New York named Sarah. We decided to go camping at Farwiki Beach. And while we were there, we heard that there had been some whales that were seen in the bay at Cape Farewell. And I was like, oh, cool, there's like whales. We can go see them like swimming. That'll be great. And we went to Cape Farewell and there was 400 stranded whales. It was so devastating. I think it's the biggest stranding that's ever happened in New Zealand. So we were spending some days there anyway, so we went out there with so many other volunteers. They put blankets over them and we were just keeping them wet and cool. We were just there for 2 days trying to get these whales unstranded and back out to the ocean. And there was this point where I was with this whale. We named her, I didn't name her Penelope, but someone named her Penelope. And one of the coordinators came by and she's like, if you just dig some sand out from beneath her chin, that will help her like feel a little bit more comfortable so she can move around, because they're massive mammals. Can't even imagine how uncomfortable and scared they were. I was like, okay, I can dig under her chin. Meanwhile, she's got this big jaw and teeth. If she had just moved her head and like bit me, like I would have lost my arm. But I was next to her head and I was being very mindful of her blowhole, to not pour water in her blowhole because that can actually drown them. I started digging like really carefully under her chin and she was looking at me and I just felt like this beautiful creature trusts me. She trusts me. It was such a beautiful moment. I'm gonna cry in all my videos that I make. I just felt this connection with her and I was like, oh my God, this is me living the Whale Rider movie. It was this full circle moment, the first of many on my travels. I was like, wow. Traveling is magical. Like, it is actually magic. We did manage to get the rest out, which was the best moment, seeing them swim back out to the ocean. It was just really transformative. The way I was experiencing the world was very different than I ever had before. A lot of really beautiful moments in that first year when I was living in New Zealand, and it wasn't without its challenges. I was facing a lot of fear of the unknown as well that I developed from having my surgery and having it so sudden and unexpectedly. I grew a lot in that first year. I created foundation for my travels to follow. One other really wonderful thing that came out of this was when I was working up in Auckland. I was working at this really amazing plant-based cafe called Little Bird. If you ever go to Auckland, you have to go there because it is fantastic. The food is so amazing. I was with a lovely crew, mostly women working there, and everyone was pretty health focused, like kind of like me. When we would go out, there was never any pressure for me to drink. Sometimes when you're traveling and staying, well, often, when you're traveling and staying in hostels, people like to go out and party, you know, because they're traveling, they're having a good time. Because this was the first year of me not drinking, I did get some comments from other travelers when we go to a bar and I would just have a Coke and they're like, oh, why aren't you drinking a beer? It's so enjoyable. So I did have some uncomfortableness and some awkwardness when that happened. But what I realized is that a lot of the friends that I made, both when I was traveling and also when I was working at the vegan restaurant in Auckland, is that there were other people like me who didn't feel the need to drink and get shit-faced to have a good time. We would bond over conversation and our shared experiences traveling, over cooking and making food together, and working together. And I just realized that you can go out and have a good time without getting completely off your face. Even though New Zealand does have kind of like a wine and drinking culture, I still, because I was changing from the inside out and I was doing this inner work, it was reflecting in the friendships and relationships I was building. It was just so nice to finally meet people who didn't make me feel uncomfortable for not drinking. By making that decision and that commitment to yourself and to behaviors and actions and experiences that enhance you instead of dragging you down, you are going to meet more people who are on the same path as you. That is what I learned as well when I was in my first year of travel in Aotearoa in New Zealand. And it just was such a gift. It really was. After my first year in New Zealand, I decided that I was finally gonna go to India. And I also traveled there solo. Again, I was meeting more people who were spiritual and interested in the same things as me. Being in that kind of environment and traveling somewhere like India, drinking isn't the main focus. Like you can get alcohol, especially in places like Goa or the major cities, but it never was the main focus. Partying was never the main focus with the people that I was attracting. It was really nice to meet people like me and putting myself in places where I wasn't going to get triggered or pressured into drinking. And so I hope what you get from listening to this story, if you made it the whole way through, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. The point of this that I want to share is that if something about where you're living, the people you're hanging out with, the job you're doing feels toxic or just isn't serving you anymore, you are allowed to leave. And traveling will not solve all your problems. It won't. Some of them may follow you, but what traveling can do is give you the distance and the space to reflect, to move forward in a different way, to recreate your life, really. So that has been my whole journey, starting from my surgery up to where I am now, a seasoned full-time traveler. Hopefully after sharing these last 3 videos, it all makes sense as to how I got to this place where I'm so invested in traveling, especially to sacred and powerful places around the world. I'm really looking forward to sharing more of my stories, especially like the magical, mind-blowing, like how is this even happening bits. That is why travel is so magical and why I love it so much. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.